Good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and start today. Thank you very much for attending. We know this is literally the busiest time in our industry and you have a lot on your plate. So I'm Jennifer Lisanti, the Director of Sales at Beere&Purves, and we appreciate you attending today on our webinar for a CAA, which we're going to focus on only a small portion of this huge 6,000-page bill. So a couple housekeeping items before we get started, and that is when everyone's off camera and mute so you can relax. And we do welcome questions though, so please type them into the questions section of the format here, and I'll address those at the end. And if we run out of time, because we are keeping this to 30 minutes, we'll definitely circle back to you to answer any questions you may have. But I'll go ahead and answer the number one question we have always, which is we will be sending out a copy of the deck and of the recording, and you'll have the links to all of our resources as well on our webpage. So having said that, we'll go and jump into it. Again, this is our webinar on the CAA. It's the Consolidated Appropriations Act. It was signed into law a year ago by actually then President Trump, and it is a massive 6,000-page bill. And with this bill, healthcare is a portion of it. It's actually like the second COVID legislation that passed, and healthcare was a small portion of it. And a lot of it has to do with transparency and those horrible surprise bills that people would get with air ambulances, etc. So there's a lot in this. For example, we've got the providers, the carriers have to change ID cards, etc. But we're focusing on the 5 pages that are required for just your broker consultant compensation disclosure. So that's big picture. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. The agenda today is an overview of the legislation, who needs to disclose, what needs to be disclosed, when things need to be disclosed, how to make those disclosures, penalties, tips for your agencies, and then the resources that Beere&Purves has put together for your use. For the disclaimer, of course, we are for informational purposes only. We are not legal or tax professionals, so please defer to your valuable resources for that information. And a big thing to know is that the Department of Labor, unfortunately, still has not released any FAQs specific to our world, meaning the 5 pages that have to do with the broker consultant compensation disclosure that we're going to be covering today. So when they do that, potential some of this information changes. We'll certainly keep you apprised of that. But for now, we'll go ahead and get started with what we know today. So a quick overview is that what essentially this new law is doing is it's amending ERISA. And so it is actually putting the disclosure requirements that hit the financial services industry back in 2012 in our world. So if you're familiar with what financial services industry has to do as far as compensation disclosure, it's very similar to what now is being applied to us, to the brokers and consultants in the group ERISA world. So that's what it is. And the intent is really for the plan fiduciary to get information from the covered service providers, and the plan fiduciary, which is essentially the group, needs to look at the services you're providing and the compensation you're receiving for those services, and then they can decide if it's reasonable or not. The ironic part is, at least in the smaller market, the 1-100, the bulk of your commission comes from medical plans, and the commission for medical plans, as you know, is built into the filed rates for the state of California. They can't be changed. So you outline your services, you say you're getting a flat 5% for the group medical commission, for example, and the group for some reason finds that's not reasonable, there's nothing they can do to change it. In the small group world, of course, large group is a different story. So that's kind of, questionable for some people why we have to do all this, but there's of course more to it. It's not just medical commissions that you're disclosing. So we'll cover that. This applies to any ERISA health plan. And so when we're talking about ERISA, health plan isn't just the medical plan. It includes dental, vision. It also includes FSA, HSA, etc. And so it does not include life or disability, but it is for sure medical, dental, vision. So be aware of that. And this new requirements applies to all size groups, any size, small group, large group, fully insured, self-insured, etc. You have to provide the services that you are providing for the group, outline them, and they could be different for different groups, so be aware of that. And when you have to provide this, it does only apply if you're making $1,000 or more for compensation for the specific group. So if you have a group that for some reason, if they don't have medical, for example, you only have, say, vision, maybe you aren't making $1,000 of compensation on that specific group. So you wouldn't need to do this for that group. But in general, probably for any 2-life medical case you have, especially if it's medical, dental, and vision, you're going to be receiving $1,000 or more of commission compensation that you'll need to disclose. So you may just want to do it for all small groups plus. And then when this is starting, it is technically going into play 1 year after it was signed by President Trump on December 27th of 2021. So you might be concerned that, oh no, I have to do this for all my 1-1 groups, and we're going to talk about that. You may for some, but hopefully not for many. So let's level set with some definitions real quick. So a covered plan per ERISA is the group benefits that provides medical, and again, that's medical, dental, and vision. It can also include HRA and FSA. A covered service provider, that's actually you, the broker, the agent, the consultant. So it's anyone who enters into a contract or an arrangement with a covered plan and expects to receive $1,000 or more of direct or indirect compensation for providing, quote, broker and consulting services, which we have outlined in an additional slide we'll show you. For covered services, it is broker and consulting services are what those are, and again, those are outlined. Direct compensation is what you're receiving directly from the covered plan. So for example, the direct commissions you're receiving on the medical plan. Indirect compensation also has to be disclosed, and indirect compensation can be a couple things. So it can be from vendors other than the covered plan. So say you put in a COBRA administrator, FSA, HSA, Ben admin system, et cetera. If you're getting a compensation for those services, that would have to be identified to the group as well. And this is the most probably interesting. It also includes any non-monetary compensation if it equates to $250 or more. And so what that means is if the carrier takes you to a baseball game, if they take you to a very nice dinner, give you gifts, et cetera, and the value of that gift in aggregate is $250 or more, then that should be disclosed to the group. The question, we're getting a lot of questions on that, and that is, the carrier is going to apply it to your agency as a whole, and then you'll need to identify. It doesn't necessarily mean, oh, well, they didn't take me out to the game for that specific case. It's just in general for the relationship. That probably still has to be disclosed, even if it's because it's general relationship. All right, so who is required to disclose? Again, it is any agent, broker, or consultant that's earning $1,000 or more for the life of that, not the life, I should say, for that plan year. So I want to stop there and we're getting lots of questions of, well, is it $1,000 per line of coverage? So you might get there on the medical, but if the vision, I don't earn $1,000 on the vision plan, do I have to disclose that? It's in total. So you look at, for that group, all the compensation you're getting, whether it's medical, dental, vision, combine it, total it up for the plan year, and if it's $1,000 or more, you need to disclose to that client, I made X amount, and these are the services I provided. So speaking of the broker and consulting services, they're outlined here. I'm not going to go through all of them. Probably the one everyone here is involved in is the first bullet point, where you're certainly helping your clients select, develop, and implement plan designs. Excuse me. So you may or maybe not be providing these additional sources here, and probably based on the size group, depends on what services you're providing. But this is the list of what they consider the broker and consulting services. And so if you're providing these, you are being bound to disclose the comp for these services. So when to disclose? So the big change here is this is prospective, so it's ahead of time. So unlike the 5,500, where at the end you say, hey, FYI, this is the commission I made for your specific group, etc., this is ahead of time. So that's the big change and thing to note. And it's not specific yet, it is reasonably in advance. So of when the contract or an arrangement is entered, extended, or renewed. So what does that mean? I think for brokers that have larger size groups, they probably actually have a service contract. They actually get a signature on from the group when they're entering into, quote, an actual contract with the client. I'm going to guess that most brokers in the smaller end of the market don't actually have a contract. They have their clients sign. So what defines that arrangement? And from what we're hearing so far, it can be, for example, if you get a new client and you get a broker record, so that broker record can indicate that you've entered into an arrangement with that group to provide them services and you'll be compensated. So if that broker record is prior to December 27th, for this year, you wouldn't have to disclose it for that specific client. You will need to disclose it at the renewal after December 27th. So let's talk about, again, this December 27th, which is extremely close to our 1/1 business, which is the highest volume of business we have. So if you have 1/1 effective dates, this isn't tied to an effective date. Again, it starts December 27th of this year. And so what that means is if you have a group that renews January 1st and you met with them, say in November, and you proposed their options, the group decided whether they're going to stay with the current carrier, what plans they're going to be offering, et cetera. You've done open enrollment meetings, or maybe they're switching from one carrier to another, and they've filled out those applications, you submitted it to the new carrier. And even if it's not approved yet, that as long as you've entered into that arrangement, they're clearly working with you, you need to give them information. So for this year, though, if you've done all your 1/1s, you put them to bed for 1/1/22, and they're resolved at this point, you wouldn't need to disclose this year for the next year, January 2022, but you will need to do it the following year at their next renewal. So you probably don't have to scramble right now for all your 1/1 effective dates. The other comment I will say on that is, most of the people on this call do small group, and it's very common that you can have a group call you on December 29th and say, hey, I want insurance for January 1st. And you guys know that you can still do that. It's never smooth, probably, but you can still submit, January 1st business on January 5th for a 1/1 effective date. So for that specific group, if they hadn't made their decision on what they're doing for January 1st, prior to December 27th of this year, you should disclose to that specific client the services you're going to provide and what you're going to be paid for those services. So keep all that in mind as far as the date and when this goes into effect for you. And it can be different for everyone based on when you put your renewals to bed or when you have that an arrangement, either that signed contract or that implied arrangement with that group specifically. So now I'm going to skip down to in general, it is required annually. So it's not like when you get that broker record this year, you disclose it once and you're done. It is an annual thing, with the exception of if you have a multi-year contract. So I'm thinking like dental with a 2-year rate guarantee, for example, maybe you don't have to provide it to them annually because the rates are guaranteed for 2 years, but you might want to anyway, just of course you're probably doing it on the medical side anyway. On different lines of coverage, it's pretty common in the smaller market to have multiple effective dates for groups, lines of coverage. So for example, if the group has, say, a July dental effective date and a 1/1 medical effective date, you might have to be touching that group twice to put those renewals to bed. And when you do so after December 27th, you'll need to disclose what you're making on that group and that line of coverage. Now, I would say if you're having that same conversation at one time, so maybe they renew closer together and you're, marketing it, they're making their decisions, and maybe even though say the dental renews November and the medical is January, it's kind of one conversation, you'd give them one disclosure annually at that point in time. It's just kind of depending on how you're working with that client. The other thing to keep aware of is you are supposed to, provide this when you enter into this contract. There's other times you might have to provide this as well. So if you give them all your information and then you realize there was a mistake that you made, you have 30 days from the time you realize there's a mistake in order to correct it. If something changes along the way, so if you think of maybe a carrier's broker bonus for the year, so maybe they have one now and midway through the year they change it and your group could potentially result in you earning that broker bonus, you would need to go to that client within 60 days and let them know of the change, that potential compensation you could earn from them being your client. And the third one is the most important to know is anytime you are requested this information, you have 90 days to provide it. And FYI, if you don't provide it, that group can report you to the Department of Labor that you didn't provide it. And that would get into some potential penalties, which we'll talk to in a little bit. So again, For your 1-1s, if you put them to bed, you probably don't have to do anything with them this year, but you will need to at the renewal. And then if you realize there was a mistake, you have 30 days to fix it. If there's a change, you have 60 days to notify the group. And if they have a request information from you, you've got 90 days to give them an information. All right, so what must be disclosed? So the number one thing you need to outline is your services you're providing for this specific group, and it needs to be custom to that group. So, you know, if your firm offers the exact same services to all groups, that's great. You can probably have one template with the services kind of saved there, but think about different groups. You know, maybe not every group offers a bin admin system through you. So, you know, maybe you would do it to all groups, maybe you do it to groups of 10 or more, maybe you've got a client, it's just not their personality, they are not interested in a bin admin system, so they don't take it. So think about that. It really does need to be specific to each group. So you can't just have a blanket disclosure to be in compliance with this new legislation. You actually have to have a custom disclosure per each group that needs to be applicable for that specific group. And again, it's outlining the services you're providing, and then you do need to call out if you happen to be the plan fiduciary on the group. That's very uncommon, so you're probably not that, but if you are, you need to outline it on the disclosure that you give them, so be aware of that. But again, the answer is probably no, you're not. It's very rare. Again, this is for direct compensation, which we'll talk about, as far as indirect compensation as well. It's any money you're receiving tied to the specific group needs to be revealed to the group for the health, you know, ERISA plans, that medical, dental, vision, etc. And some of the verbiage you'll see, as I said, this is applied to the financial service industry since 2012. So some of the verbiage might not really fit our world. So you can see 5 and 6 may or may not apply to your world. But if they do, you need to disclose them. All right, so what are some examples of services? This, again, just are examples we think of brokers and consultants provide. You know, certainly it's a placement of insurance, helping them get enrolled, potentially bin admin system, account management throughout the year, servicing that account in general. Do you provide compliance for that specific group or not? Consulting, referrals, etc. So any, you know, services you provide to that specific group need to be outlined if you're receiving compensation on that. So how do you describe the compensation? First, it's, again, any monetary value or non-monetary if it's at $250 or more. So those baseball tickets, that game that the carrier provided to you, etc. So how do you outline it? So the first thing when this came out, people were saying, okay, you know, I make $1,500 on this case. You know, I'll tell them I make $1,500. You probably don't want to do that, especially for like the medical, dental, and vision, where you're getting, in California in general, it's a percentage of the premium. So you, instead of saying I make $1,500 specifically, what happens when they add 10 employees, for example? What you'll want to do is say, on the medical, I get paid 5% of the premium, and on the dental, I get paid 10% of the premium, something like that. We don't get paid too much per employee per month in the state of California, which is great. But if that is how you're paid, so for example, like the level funded products that have hit the market, those are all level funded. So instead of saying a percentage of premium, you could just identify, I get paid $60 per employee per month, for example, on this group. So again, however you're specifically paid on that client is what you need to outline on your disclosure. I will point out too that we have resources to all our current carriers, brokers, commission and their bonus programs, because you should outline those as well. The bonuses are so detailed, you're probably better just literally giving them a copy of what the bonus program is versus filling it out on your template. So just a suggestion, but you can do what you want as long as it's disclosed in a reasonable manner, you're good. But what I was also going to say is you need to think about the commission schedule that that specific group is on. So if you wrote a group with Anthem Blue Cross 20 years ago, and we have groups that have had Anthem for 20 years, they might be on a different commission schedule than the groups you currently write with Anthem. It might be a 10% downgraded schedule, for example, versus a flat 5% you get paid now. So keep that in mind as you're going through disclosures to specific groups. And how to deliver. So unfortunately, maybe fortunately, there is absolutely no guidance really. There's no format they've given us. There's no set, any distinct format that you have to provide. So it does need to be, I would say, a written document, but you can email it, you can mail it, you can deliver it in person. It does not require a signature, but a signature might be a good idea. So it's up to you. There's also some verbiage that if they don't sign it, you could put on there, you know, if you don't sign it 10 to 15 days, it's implied that you understand it, etc. And you want to keep that documentation. So again, just kind of big picture reminders, putting this all together, is the purpose of the legislation is transparency in our industry as a whole. And you are supposed to be disclosing whatever services you're providing for that specific group and whatever compensation you get for that specific group. Or if that specific group is tied to compensation, like that carrier bonus program, maybe this one group is just part of 10 groups that got you that bonus. You need to give them that information and that non-monetary information as well. As far as, you know, really what's going on here, it's the onus is on the plan fiduciary, the group, for example. The whole reason why you're doing this is because the group is required to look at the services you're providing them and deem them reasonable or not. And again, the irony, at least in the small group medical world, is if they deem it's not reasonable, you can't change it. The rates are the rates. The commission is the same whether they use one broker or another broker or use no broker. So they can't say, oh, this isn't reasonable, you need to be paid less. It just doesn't happen in the small group medical world. Again, we're talking dental, vision, and other lines of coverage, it's services. So that's not the big picture, but I would say you probably want to call that out, that the medical commission can't be changed, at least in the small group medical world in California. So again, the onus is really on the group to be requesting this, not the group to be determining this information, but you, the broker consultant, should be providing the information. And if you are ever requested of the information, remember you have that 90 days, and if you don't do it, the group could technically report you to the Department of Labor, FYI. Which leads us to penalties. So again, there is responsibility on the plan fiduciary as well as yourself to provide the information and to the plan fiduciary to look at it and deem it reasonable. So if you or them don't do it, there can be penalties for either of you or both of you. So just a quick reminder, you know, there can be civil enforcement of ERISA, there can be civil penalties for ERISA, there could be a 20% additional penalty if it goes to a court case, for example. And we all know that the Department of Labor does random audits sometimes. They've been including in those audits financial services compensation disclosures. So they might just start adding this, the ERISA health plan broker consultant disclosure request in those audits if they happen to occur. So that's another way that could come out. But so some tips, the main thing is, you know, you can use this to your advantage. Remind your group of everything you do for them and all the services that you provide. They probably forget. So it's a good way to sell your services to them and remind them everything you do. And then again, that rate parity that, again, on the medical for small group, that no matter, you know, you can't change the comp that you get, but it's important to outline the services. But again, it needs to be unique to each group. Of course, educate yourself on what this is, educate your staff so they can answer the questions and make sure that they're helping you be in compliance, and really have a plan. You know, how are you going to attack this? Like, when are you going to address it with the client? You know, what's your company philosophy? Where's your template? You need to keep a copy of that, etc. So you want to keep a record of which groups these apply to. You might just want to give it to all small groups, you know, even if they have that vision only plan with you, maybe just because in case you get, you know, it's a good sales pitch too. I'm sure some brokers are going to be out there saying, oh, your current broker didn't give you this information. Well, they're supposed to be doing it. Yeah, who knows, but FYI. You do need to create a template. As I said, Beere&Purves has one. There's other ones out there. You can create your own. And you do need to customize those services unique to the group and outline the compensation you're getting for all the services you're providing to that specific group. And you certainly want to keep a copy of that document that you gave that group. And again, remember, it's annual. So you want to make sure you know where to find that if the Department of Labor actually does come and ask you for that. So the Beere&Purves resources that we put together for you. So we have a summary, and this is on our website, where you can link that explains just for yourself a quick summary of what I went through today. Of course, feel free to call us. Happy to answer any questions you may have. And we'll keep you posted when those DOL frequently asked questions are ever released on the group comp. Then we actually have a good summary for groups themselves. So a summary for the group that you can explain, you know, why I'm doing this now, what is it, and summary for yourself to help with your staff, etc. We put together a disclosure template that you can use. you'll see it at the very top. You outline your services, then you put your direct comp, you put your indirect comp, etc. And it's good to have some just general verbiage in there that, other things may come up during the year. We have a linked, again, all of our broker commissions for all the lines of coverage and the carriers we sell, so you can quickly know, for new groups at least, what you're being paid for, quickly identify that, and then all the bonus programs that are out there with the carriers. And those, again, are very tedious sometimes. They're great, but there's a lot of qualifying information on there, so you might just want to attach literally what the bonus is and say, hey, this might apply or not. Again, this is ahead of time, so you don't know if you're going to earn the bonus, but it's important to outline that you may. And then we will keep track of all the carrier information that's being released. FYI, this applies on the individual market as well, but the carrier, for the most part, is responsible for disclosing the broker comp to the individual member. You, the broker consultant, are responsible for disclosing the comp to the group, for group ERISA medical plans, or health plans, I should say. So FYI, the carriers really aren't doing anything. UHC's put together some great information for you, and all the flavor from the carriers when I'm talking to them is they're just going to make sure that you can know where to go to the carrier site to find out what you are being paid on the group, so you can disclose that to the client. So that is what I had today. Let's see, we were right at 10, but I'm going to look to see if we have any questions here. Thank you very much for your time. And if I don't get to all of them, if there are questions, we'll certainly circle back to you. All right. I see some questions. One sec, let me make them a little bigger. Oops. Sorry, I think there are some questions and I don't know why I'm having trouble. Try this again. So I can read them. Okay. And if you have to go, understand that, no worries. Is the $1,000 per client per product? And it is not per line of coverage, it is per client for that year. Does this include life insurance? No, it does not include life insurance. You may want to go ahead and include life and disability because they're saying, well, it is part of your disclosures for SPCs or SPDs, et cetera. So there's no problem disclosing the information, of course. Do we disclose all services even if we do not make compensation on the service? Again, this is all tied to you disclosing the service and compensation if there is any. So. And I think those are all the questions I see right now, guys. So I will let you go. I know it's a busy time for everyone. Again, thank you very much for your time. If anything else comes up, feel free to let us know. Happy to help you. Sorry, there's some other questions coming in. Let's see. Sorry, reading this one. So the question is really, that timing. When do I do this? And so that's a great question. And you need to disclose once you know what the group is doing for the renewal, what you're going to be making. Then that kind of gets into the debate, well, maybe they need to know what you're making before they can make their decisions. It so can in the smaller market. Maybe that's not such a piece as it is on the financial services side. You might want to just give them a general disclosure that FYI, I get paid by the carriers in general, and then once they make that specific carrier decision, let them know for the specific carrier you've chosen, this is exactly what I'm going to get made or paid on it. So that's what I would say on that one. All right, guys, sorry, it's 10:01, so I'll let you go, but we'll circle back if anything else comes in. Don't be shy, and definitely let us know how we can help you with all your one-on-one business, because we know you know it's a busy time, and we're always happy to help. Take care.